Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shiur.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is Erevin Daf Chav Gimel, on Chav Beis on Beis, at the Mishnah, 4 lines from the bottom. Going back to Pasi Berois, those boards constructed around this water hole. What type of water hole can have Pasi Berois? Says the Mishnah, Echad de Boy Harabim, whether it's a water hole containing water, not fresh water, a bor containing rainwater, but it belongs to a Rabbim, in which case there's less concern that one might continue carrying in this enclosure even when the water source becomes depleted, which nullifies the mechitzes. The allowance is only when there is water present. So the Mishnah says if it's a boir harabim, so it's enclosed water, it's stored water, it's not fresh water, but it belongs to the Rabbim, which will keep each other mindful of the fact that water needs to be present in order to allow carrying within this enclosure. That's one example. U'be'er harabim, certainly when it's a be'er, it's fresh water. It's a fresh water well, which belongs to a Rabbim, in which case there's even less concern of water depleting and drying out. It's a be'er. So you have two positive elements. Number one, it's a spring of fresh water. Number two, it belongs to the Rabbim, who remind each other. U'be'er hayachid, or if it's a be'er, so it's a fresh water source, but it belongs to a yachid, individual, where perhaps there is concern that he might inadvertently continue carrying even when the water dries up. So in either one of these cases, since there's at least one positive element present, either it's fresh water, which carries less chance of drying up, or it belongs to a Rabbim, which will keep each other mindful to only carry properly. It says the Mishnah, Oisla and Pasen, we can construct for these water sources, these water containments, pasim, boards, to allow carrying in this containment. But if it's a bur, so it's only stored water, and it belongs to a yachid, so we have two negative elements here. Number one, there's a good chance that this water supply might dry up. And number two, since it belongs to an individual, you might perhaps forget and inadvertently carry even when the water supply depletes. In this case, we cannot apply the pasin, rather, we must make a proper mechitza. Oisen loy mechitza, kavay yutfachem, he needs to construct for this bar a mechitza 10 tfachim high, a proper mechitza to allow carrying. Divrei Rekiva. So Rekiva maintains at least one positive element needs to be present, either fresh water or belongs to a Rav. Rabbi Baba Omer, he's more stringent. He says we need two favorable elements here. Ein oisen pasin, ele be'er harabim belvad. Pasin can only be applied to a be'er. So number one, it's a fresh source of water, and it belongs to the Rabbim, in which case they'll keep each other mindful to only carry when appropriate. So both these elements need to be present in order to allow the pasin to be used. It needs to be a source of fresh water and belong to the Rabbim. Ulishar, and then you have the other water containments, oisin chagura gavayas aratfachim, you make a chagura, some type of strap, some type of mechitza, which is a proper mechitza 10 tfachim high, you cannot apply Pasi Berois. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yudah Amar Shmuel, Halach Rav Yudah ben Bava. The halacha follows the shita, which is that the only time pasin can be applied is if it's a be'er, so it's a source of fresh water, and also belongs to a Rabbim. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yudah Amar Shmuel, Lo yhutru Pasi Berois. Pasi Berois can only be applied the ella lebe'er mayim chaim belvad, only if it's a source of fresh water, if it's a wellspring of water. So this seems to be a repetition. Both are statements of Rav Yosef in the name of Rav Yudah Amar Shmuel, and they seem to be merely repetitious. It says the word tzricha, both are needed. Because if he would have taught us ashmi'inan, that halacha is like Rav Yudah ben Bava, who says the pasin are only to be used by the Be'er Harabim. However, perhaps I would say, when Rav Yudah ben Bava says Be'er Harabim, he didn't specifically mean it needs to be Be'er Harabim. Perhaps even if it's a Boir Harabim, even if it's just a containment of water, even rainwater, as long as it belongs to the Rabbim, which will keep each other mindful, not to carry inappropriately, that's also fine. So why did he specifically say Be'er Harabim, which implies it needs to be a wellspring of water? Says Mahava Amina, I would say the Rabbim, if it belongs to a Rabbim, afilu mechunasim, even if it's merely a containment of rainwater, that's also fine. Because the overriding factor, the most important criterion is that it belongs to the rabbim. Why then does he stipulate be'er harabim, which implies it needs to be a wellspring of water? Not necessarily so. It's only lafukim to Akiva. He's coming to exclude from Akiva, who tells us that if it belongs even to a yachid, where Akiva says even if one positive element is here, so if it's a be'er, if it's a wellspring, even if it belongs to a yachid, that's fine, because there's less chance of the water drying up when it's a natural source of water. That's Rabbi Akiva's shita. Now Yehuda ben Bava is contrasting that. He's saying, no, I disagree. A be'er can only be fine if it belongs to the rabbim. But realistically speaking, he would allow even by a boyer rabbim. The most important criterion is whether it belongs to a rabbim or not. So even a boyer, which is merely a storage area of water, if it belongs to the rabbim, that's fine. Because according to him, the determining criterion is rabbim. Kamash malan. So therefore, Rav Yosef needs to quote Rav Yehuda ben Shmuel, who tells us in the second statement, not only do we follow Rav Yehuda ben Bava's shita, which perhaps can be misconstrued to be applied even to a boyer rabbim. He comes and teaches us, no, the loyhuchu pasiberois elo ber mayim chayim. The pasiberois are only allowed to be used if it's a be'er of mayim chayim, a wellspring of fresh water. Now, if only from that second statement, says the Gemara, if only for that second statement, Havamin, perhaps I would say, that is the determining factor. It's a wellspring of water. Lo yishna the rabbim, lo yishna the yachid. It's irrelevant whether it belongs to the rabbim or the yachid, because the overriding factor is that it's a wellspring of fresh water, in which case the chances of it becoming depleted and dried out are very, very small. There's no concern of carrying, even when there's no water. So perhaps that's what I would say. That if it's a be'er, it can belong even to a yachid. Kamash malon. Therefore, Rav Yosef in the first statement tells us halacha Yehuda ben Bava, that indeed it needs to belong to a rabbim specifically. So in summary, the halacha follows Yehuda ben Bava, who requires both elements. Number one, it needs to be a wellspring of water. Number two, belongs to a rabbim. So in summary, regarding applying the pasim, Rabbi Akiva maintains even if there's one positive element, that's okay. When it's a be'er, source of water, whether it belongs to a rabbim or yachid, that's fine. When it's merely water contained, but not a fresh source of water, it's a bur. When it belongs to a rabbim, that's okay, because they'll keep each other mindful to carry only appropriately. Rabbi Bava tells us both elements are required. Number one, needs to be a be'er, a fresh source of water. Number two, needs to belong to a rabbim. Continues the Mishnah. Now we're going to proceed to the halacha of a mokim shleihukaf ledira. This was discussed several times so far, and this upcoming Mishnah Gemara is actually going to be the source of this discussion. A makom shaloihukaf l'dir means a place which was not enclosed for the sake of dira, of residing in it. It's a non-residential enclosure. So it's loihukaf, it wasn't surrounded and enclosed, l'dir, for the sake of residing, for the sake of a proper residence. We learned that the maximum size allowed for this enclosure is only base sa'asayim, an area which you can plant 2 sa'ah of seeds, which is actually taken from the size of the chatzar mishkan, the courtyard around the mishkan, which also contained this area. It was this size, it was 100 ames long by 50 ames wide, and that also was a makam which was not really hukaf ledira, it was a non-residential enclosure. The Chacham maintained that if you make a makam which is loikaf ledira, it can't be too large in size. Otherwise, it closely resembles a open, unfenced area, like a field, like a forest, like a karmel, like a rishus harabim. Therefore, only if it's small in size, small enough, where it can be viewed as something which is designated for personal use, then we consider this place as a shayachid, and it can carry within it, even though it was lo yuhukaf l'dir, it was not surrounded and enclosed for the sake of dira, of a residence. And this shiur was taken from the Chatzar Mishkan, which sets the limit at this size of 2 sa'ah. So if it's up until this size, it's fine, it's considered to be an area for personal residence, personal use. But if it's larger than that, you cannot carry in it. So the term which is going to be recurring over and over again is hukaf ledira, meaning it was enclosed for the sake of residency of dira, in which case there's no limit to the size. You can enclose even a huge area, can have a huge house, a huge courtyard. If it's considered to be hukav l'dir, that's fine. But if it's lo hukav l'dir, not surrounded for the sake of dira, of residency, it's considered to be like close to a carmelis, and therefore only if it's small enough in size, in which case it appears like it's designated for personal use, then you can carry within it. And what is that shiur? The shiur of 2 sah, which is 100 amas by 50. Continues the Mishnah. We're going to discuss the size of this lo hukav l'dira. We're going to discuss what element needs to be present to allow carrying within it. And we're also going to discuss the configuration, the shape of this makkah. So these 3 topics are going to be discussed in our Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, in addition, Amar Vidu and Bava. So this is in addition to the Shita of Rabbi Vidu and Bava mentioned in the previous Mishnah. He tells us another halach. Hagina, a garden, v'karfif. Karfif is a storage area. It's a non-residential area. It's lo hukav l'dir. Shein shivim amma v'shirayim, which have a size of 70 amma plus, meaning 2/3 of an amma, which is 4 tfachim, 70 and 4 tfachim, al shivim amma v'shirayim. So it's 70 and 2/3 amma by 70 and 2/3 amma, which is exactly the size of the Chatzar Mishkan, which was 100 by 50. If you square it, you come out with this number. So if this area is just small enough in size, which appears like something designated for personal use, Hamakaf is Geder, Gavayasar Tfachim. So these places are surrounded with a fence, 10 Tfachim high, proper Mechitza, Metalton Besoicha, you may carry within them. So that's number 1. It needs to be properly sized. Number 2 says Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava a Chiddush. We need to have an additional element which gives it an appearance, some semi-resemblance of a residence. Ubelvad sheheba shoymira, provided that in this enclosed area we have a shoymira, which is a guard's house, guard's booth, oibeis dira, or some type of apartment, some type of dwelling. So although the owner only comes there occasionally, this is sufficient to provide this enclosure with a status of a semi-residence. Or at least it should be within the tchum of the city, which designates it for personal use, and therefore we can carry within this non-residential area. So according to this shita, it needs to be properly conformed in size, and also contain this additional residential element to it. Rabbi Yehuda, you don't need such a serious residential element. I feel even if there's only a pit with water, a siach, a long and narrow pit of water, or even a cave where one can go in there to protect himself from the elements. So even this less significant element of residency allows this enclosed area to carry within it. Metalton b'seicha, one can carry within it. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you don't need such a prominent element of residency like the Shemero Beis Dira. Even a Bar Seicha provides that allowance, gives it that at least semi-residential flavor, which allows carrying. Rabbi Kiva Omer, none of the above are necessary. Even if none of these are present in this enclosure, you can carry within it, provided that has the proper size. That the area enclosed is 70 and a bit by 70 and a bit. According to Rabbi Kiva, as long as the size conforms, no additional elements are necessary. So you have 3 shittas. According to Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, in addition to the size, you need to have those residential elements, those more prominent residential elements. According to Rabbi Yehuda, even less prominent elements are fine. According to Rabbi Kiva, no elements are required aside from the proper size area. Rav Lezer Omer, Im Hoisa Orka Yasal Rachba. Now we're going to speak about the shape. So he says if the arka, the length, was greater than the rachba, Yasal Rachba, meaning it was a rectangle rather than a square, Afilu Ama'achas, even if it was longer than square, meaning it was a bit longer than the width, even 1 amma. So it's not a perfect square, one cannot carry within this. But to see in the Gemara the source for this halach. Rabbi Yehuda, no, Afilu Orka Pishnai Barach. Even if the length is twice as much as the width, meaning it's a perfect rectangle, you can carry within it. Concludes the Mishnah. I heard from Rabbi Lezer 3 halachas. Number 1, this makom shalayukav ladira can be even large in size. Afilu beis kur, even if it contains an area of beis kur, you can plant 30 sa, it's fine. There's no limit of 2 sa. In addition, I heard from him as follows: Anshe chatzer, sheshachach echad mehem v'lo erev. You have people living in a courtyard which requires them to make erev chatzeris, to carry along the area. Now, one fellow didn't take part in the erev. He forgot or whatever. Now, there's another option, another way out. He can be mevatel his rishus. He can surrender his usage, his allowance of usage in this chatzar, sort of give it over to them, and this is matir the chatzar b'tilta. So as this person was mevatel his rishus, what happens? Beisay also malachnes uloitziloi. He cannot carry in and out of his house, because if he does that, he's going to be taking back his rishus. But they can do so. It's going to be discussed in the Gemara later. This is another chiddush that I heard from Rabbi Lezer. Number 3, v'chein shemati menu. I also heard from Rabbi Lezer regarding Pesach, regarding Mara. Sheyotzin bar kivalon bet Pesach. One can eat this arkivalon plant, which grows around the palm tree, use it as Mara for Pesach. Concludes Rabbi Loi, v'chazati al kol talmidav. I made my rounds amongst all the talmidim of Rabbi Lezer. Ubikashti lichaver. I was searching for a friend, somebody who concur with me that Rabbi Lezer holds these things. But I haven't found. Rashi explains that they disagreed with him on all 3 accounts. So when it comes to the makom shelo ladira, you are limited at 2 sa. When it comes to the chatzar there, even they can't use his house. And when it comes to the marar, they held this was not appropriate and suitable for marar. Continues the Gemara. So we began the Mishnah with the word v'oid. Additionally, said Yehudim and Bava regarding the gina v'karfev, etc. Says on my tana, v'tani v'oid. What was learned previously regarding this concept of a makam shelo ladira, which made it appropriate for the Tana to begin his Mishnah with the word v'oid? What was he coming to add? Where had we discussed this concept previously? My Tana, the Tani v'oid. Ilema, you're going to say Mishum the Tana lechad l'chumra, because in the previous Mishnah, Yehudim Abba gives us a halacha l'chumra. This was regarding limiting the pasei b'rois only to the be'er harabim. So since he had stated one halacha l'chumra, uktani achriti, and now we have another chumra in the name of Rabbi Yehudim Abba, which is that the makom shelo ladira needs to have that shemei roi beis dira. Since we have 2 chumras consecutively, mishum hachik tani v'oid, that's why the Mishnah introduces with the word v'oid, even though they're 2 unrelated topics. Is that the reason? Says the Gemara, it won't work. Why? B'har Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana lechad l'chumra. Because when it comes to Rabbi Yehuda, we found a chumra in the beginning of the parak. Rabbi Yehuda tells us that the size inside the pasei b'rois cannot exceed 2 sa. This is a chumra. Uktani achriti. Then we have another halacha. And then Rabbi Yehuda, a chumra. In the next Mishnah, where he tells us that if the rabbim, if the rabbim are intersecting those pasei b'rois, they're more powerful than it. They're mavat those machitzah. So it's another chumra. The name of Rabbi Yehuda. Like Tani v'oid. And the Mishnah doesn't introduce that second halacha with the word v'oid. So apparently, because those 2 halachas, number 1, the size of the pasei b'rois, number 2, the power of the rabbim to know those machitzah, are 2 unrelated, unconnected halachas. Therefore, it's inappropriate to apply the concept of the word of v'oid. So why, in our case, does the Mishnah use the word v'oid? Says the Gemara, Hasam over there by Rav Yehuda. You know why there's no v'oid? Afsakur Rabbanon. Because the Rabbanon responded to Rav Yehuda in the first Mishnah. When he set the limit at 2 sa by the pasei b'rois, they respond, no, that's not the case, and they gave him a whole lengthy explanation. They would be mafsek between the 2 halachas of Rav Yehuda. Therefore, the Mishnah doesn't employ the word v'oid when introducing the second halacha, because it's been intersected by the Rabbanon in between. As opposed to our case, Hacha lo yafsakur Rabbanon. The Rabbanon didn't intersect, didn't come between these 2 halachas. So we have one halacha in this Mishnah of Rabbi Yehuda Bava, followed by another halacha of Rabbi Yehuda Bava in the next Mishnah, the 2 chumras. Therefore, it's appropriate to connect them with the word v'oid. Says Rav Chalecha, Dafsakur Rabbanon, like Tani v'oid. Whenever the Rabbanon intersect, we don't apply the word v'oid, even though there's reason, perhaps, to connect the 2 things. V'ha Rabbi Lezer the Sukkah. Daf Sukkah Rabbanon, we find in a Mishnah Sukkah. Rabbi Eliezer begins with one halacha, and the Rabbanon respond and disagree, and then Rabbi Eliezer follows with another halacha. So although there was a hefsek, Rabbanon intersected, uktani v'oid, the Mishnah does begin the second halacha of Rabbi Eliezer with the word v'oid, despite the fact that they were separated by the Rabbanon. So why would it be different here? Says the Gemara, there's a difference. Hasan b'milsei hudav sakor. When it comes to the Mishnah Sukkah, their response to Rabbi Eliezer there was on topic. They were relating to his subject. They responded to what he was saying. They didn't divert their words elsewhere. Therefore, it's not considered to be a proper hefsek. And we can consider both halachas of Rabbi Eliezer as one continuous discussion, and therefore we apply the word va'oid to introduce the second one. As opposed to our Mishnah Erev and Hacha, b'musa achriti afsakor. In the first Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda said that the area within the pasim can't exceed 2 sa'ah. The Rabbanon responded, but they went off on a tangent. They went on to explain to him, well, how can you limit it at 2 sa'ah? Don't you know that a chatzer, a dir, a sar can accommodate even greater areas? They went over the whole discussion about this lengthy topic. So it's not b'milsei, it wasn't directly referring to his words. Therefore, that makes a hefsek. That affects an intersection between the first halacha of Yehuda and the following one, and therefore v'oid is not in place. As opposed to our case here, since in the first Mishnah we have Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava telling us one chumrah, and then he immediately follows another chumrah, even though they're two unrelated cases. Since they're both chumras quoted by the same Tana, the Mishnah introduces the second halacha with the word v'oid to denote that it's as though it's one continuous discussion. Continues the Gemara. Rabbi Kiva oima afilu ein ba echad mikol elu utalton b'soicha. So this makom shloi huka fladira. Rabbi Kiva maintains we don't need any of these elements that Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava mentioned. We don't need the shemeir, the beis dira. We don't need any of them, because as long as it conforms to the proper size, that's considered to be designated for personal use, and one can carry within it. Sounds like more Rabbi Kiva Hanatana Kama. This statement of Rabbi Kiva seems to be a mirror statement of the Tanakama, who holds likewise that there's no requirement to have all these things in a Makom Shlokal Adira. Rashi points out that the Tanakama here is back in the beginning of the Perek, where the Rabbanan disputed Rabbi Yehuda's limit of the Beis Asayim by the Pasim, and they went on to explain, well, the halacha Beis Asayim only applies to a non-residential enclosure, etc. Now, it seems that all they require is the size, no more than that. So Rabbi Kiva here, who holds that the size is the exclusive determinant factor, no more is necessary, he seems to be merely repeating the Tanakama statement. Rabbi Kiva and Tanakama says, now there's some machlokes between them. Davar muat, a small amount of area. Means like this, that if we take a look at the Chatzar Mishkan, which was 100 amas long by 50 amas wide, and you go ahead and you square that, it's going to result in each one of those sides being 70 amas, plus 2/3 of an am, which is 4 tefachim, plus just a little bit, less than a finger width. So technically speaking, you can have a bit more than 70 amma and shirayim, which is the 2/3. You can have a bit more than that, which equals the exact size of the Chasar Mishkan. So this will be the point of contention. The Tanya, as we learned in the Brayso, Rida Imer, Davar Muat Yesh, Al Shiv Mama V'Shirayim. There's a bit more that technically can be allowed, can be added to the Shiv Mama, 70 Amma V'Shirayim, which is referring to the 4 Tefachim. A bit more than that, which equals exactly the dimension of the Chasar Mishkan. Chacham did not stipulate this extra amount, but certainly one can go ahead and add that to the total amount. V'shkama Shiur, so sign Chasar Mishkan. What is the Shiur of this Makom Shulukul Adira? It's so like the Chasar Mishkan, and therefore it can accommodate exactly the Shiur of the Chasar Mishkan, which is 70 and 4 Tefachim plus a little bit more. So this will be the Shita of the Tanakama, whereas Rabbi Kiva holds that you can only have 70 and 4 Tefachim. That little extra we don't allow. Perhaps because it doesn't equal a tefach. To avoid confusion, we give him a shiur of amis and tefachim, no more than that. And this is what Rekiva said in the Mishnah. You can use this area provided that it's shiv mama v'shirayim, al shiv mama v'shirayim, implying 70 and 2/3, but no more than that. So it's this little bit which will be the point of contention here. Continues to go on, Menanamile. How do we know this whole concept that the Makom Shalukif Ladira is meant to conform in size to the area of the Chatzar Mishkan? Amar Vida Damakra, Oirach Hechatz. The length of the Chatzar Mishkan was Mea Ba'ama, 100 amas long. V'roichav chamishim b'chamishim. Its width was 50 by 50. We learn from here, there's actually a smachta. It's a support to the concept. The pasuk chamishim b'chamishim, what's it coming to tell us? We know that the chatzar was 100 amas long. What do you mean 50 by 50? It's coming to indicate something. Amr Torah, Torah chamishim. Cut off 50 of the length of the chatzar, v'savev chamishim, and distribute it around the other 50, which will give you an area of 70 and a bit by 70 and a bit. And it's coming to teach us that elsewhere we want to apply this shiur. This is a formula to be applied to any makim which was lo yilkaf ladira, and this is the proper size that limits that enclosure. And actually we can learn from here as well that the makim shalukaf ladira needs to be exactly square, as the pasuk is telling us. Take the 50, surround the other 50, and create a square. And indeed, we're going to see soon that this is the sheet of Rabbi Kiva, that the chatzar shalukaf ladira, the makom shalukaf ladira, needs to be exactly square shaped, just as the Torah here is indicating. Perhaps the point of square is that it appears like a proper size. One can discern the square area, the square footage, when it's squared, but if it's long, it's difficult to determine. So it can lead to confusion. So in any case, this is the support, the asmachta for the concept of the total size, and also, according to some shittas, that needs to be actually squarely configured. It says more pashta de krov maiksiv. Okay, this was a limud, a drasha, but what was the actual pasha pshat, the simple meaning of the pasuk? When the pasuk says, roichav chamishim b'chamishim, the courtyard was 100 by 50. So what does this mean? Amar Abaye, the Torah is telling us where to put the Mishkan. We're meant to place it within this courtyard. Hamid Mishkan al sfas chamishim. Place the actual Mishkan at the edge, at the beginning of the next 50, meaning you're going into the entranceway, you're passing 50. 50 is meant to be empty. So at the beginning of 50, at the end of 50, past the entranceway, that's where you meant to place the Mishkan. Now the Mishkan is situated lengthwise along the length of the chatzar. The Mishkan was 30 amas long and 10 amas wide. So how much does this leave you on each side of the Mishkan? So you have 50 amas clear in front of the Mishkan, from the entranceway to the Mishkan, from the entranceway to the chatzar to the Mishkan, and leaves us 20 amas on each side. So you place it 50 amas into the chatzar, so that first 50 is empty. The Mishkan is 30 amas long, leaving us another 20 amas of empty space until the other side of the chatzar. Since the Mishkan was 10 amas wide, it gives us 20 amas on each side to complete the width of the chatzar, which was 50 amas. Continues the Gemara. If the makom she'eina hukaf ladira was 70 amas, so as far as the total area, the total size, it conformed, but it was configured not as a square. It was arka yasarach ba'afilo ma'achas, even a bit off, a bit longer than square. You cannot carry. V'atanya, how did we learn in the Brayso? Lezo Eimer, there's no concern. Im ha'isa arka yasra b'shnai berachva. Let's say it was very long. The oirech was greater than twice its width, afilo amachas, even if it was greater 1 amma, then twice the width. You can no longer carry it in it. Meaning, the longest it can be is when the length is twice the width, which is like the Chatzar Mishkan, which was 100 by 50. So as long as it conforms to that configuration, it gives the appearance like the Chatzar Mishkan, one can carry within it. So we see, it doesn't need to be a square, even a rectangle is fine. There's no kasha. Let's reinterpret the Mishnah. What was learned in the Mishnah as well is also referring to this concept. Mishnah says it can't be an amma longer than wide. It meant an amma longer than when the length is twice the width. Meaning, for instance, it can't be 151 by 50, but 100. It can't be 101 by 50, because in this case, the length will be more than twice its width. But if it's 100 by 50, that's fine. Exactly the way Rabbi Lezer tells us in the Bryce. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, Rabbi Lezer holds that it could be a perfect rectangle. Hein Rabbi Yossi. This is exactly what Rabbi Yossi tells us in the Mishnah. He says you must make sure that Rabbi Yossi Omer, afilu orka pishnai barach from talton b'soicha. Even if the oirach is twice as long as the width, meaning it's 100 by 50, you can carry within it. So Rabbi Lezer is saying the same exact as Rabbi Yossi. Says Ma'iki b'na, you know what the difference will be? Ribua, the Ribua Rabbanan. The square that the Rabbanan squared, meaning we discussed earlier that the pasuk of the Mishkan seems to tell us that the Makam Shulchan V'Dira needs to be specifically configured as a square. So Rabbi Yossi will maintain, l'chatchila, preferably one is meant to configure his Makam Shulchan V'Dira in this configuration, this shape. It's meant to be a square. Just as we learned from the pasuk. Perhaps it gives the appearance of the proper shape, which is discernible from the square. One can easily tell how large it is. But l'chatchila, that's how you're supposed to do it. B'di'evet, certainly, even if it's a perfect rectangle, it's 100 by 50, it's fine. But Rabbi Lezer says just the opposite. L'chatchila, it should be a perfect rectangle, 100 by 50, which resembles the Chatzar Mishkan. So, since it's similar to the Chatzar Mishkan, and the Chatzar Mishkan was perfectly fine for tiltal, so one is meant to have his area resemble that Chatzar, which gives it that residential flavor to it. It gives it an appearance of a Chatzar. It's like the Chatzar Mishkan. So it's considered to be like a Malkam Dira. But the Dieva, certainly Rabbi Lezer would agree, even if it's not 100 by 50, it's more like a square, even like a square itself, then that's fine. So the difference is very minor. All agree that a square is fine and a rectangle is fine. The question is, what is the preference? According to Rabbi Yossi, prefer a square. According to Rabbi Lezer, just the opposite, prefer a rectangle. Rabbi Yossi Amevachu. Itma, we learned, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Mishmu. Halacha Rabbi Yossi. The halacha follows Shittas Rabbi Yossi, who doesn't necessarily require, he doesn't consider it to be absolute requirement to have this area as a square. Rabbi Bibi Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Kiva. The halacha follows Rabbi Kiva, who does not require any additional residential elements to be contained in this enclosure. You don't need a shemera, a beis dira, a dwelling. In contrast with Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, who required it. But Tavai L'Kula, both conclusions here, number one, that we follow Rabbi Yossi, number two, Rabbi Kiva, are both applying Kula's leniencies. Utzricha, both are necessary. The Yashminan, Halak Rabbi Yossi. If you would only teach us that halacha follows Rabbi Yossi, that square is not an absolute requirement, however, perhaps I would say, fine. You don't need to be square. But ad the ikka shemer beis dira is only suitable for carrying if it has the booth or the dwelling, which contribute that residential element to it. Kamash malan, therefore he teaches us halach Rabbi Kiva, who does not require any of these additional features. V'yashmin halach Rabbi Kiva. If you don't tell us that halach follows Rabbi Kiva, however, perhaps I would say, fine, you don't need these additional elements. But what type of shape is required? The orich v'katan loy, if it's long and narrow, meaning it's a rectangle, that's not suitable. Because the Rabbi Kiva maintains that it needs to be perfectly squared. So perhaps I would think a square is an absolute requirement. Kamash malan, ach Rabbi Yossi, therefore he teaches us that halacha follows Rabbi Yossi, who tells us even if it's not square, it is fine. So in summary, one may carry within a karfev shlukav ledira, this storage area that was enclosed for a non-residential purpose, provided that it conforms to the following requirements. So number one, let's discuss the elements that need to be present in this enclosure. Rabbi Bava maintains needs to have a shemera, a guard booth, or a beis dira, a dwelling, or has to be within the tomb of the city, in which case it attains some sort of residential status and element to it. Rabbi says even a boyer siach hamara are sufficient. Rabbi Akiva maintains none of these elements are required to be present in this enclosure, as long as it conforms to the proper area size. Now, regarding the size of the area, we have machlokes. And the comment says it can be 70 amma and 4 tfachim plus a little bit, by 70 amma 4 tfachim plus a little bit. Rabbi Akiva says we ignore that little extra bit. It needs to be 70 and 4 tfachim by 70 and 4 tfachim. Regarding the actual shape of this area, Rabbi Akiva says a square is an absolute requirement. Rabbi Lezer says lichatchila, it's actually meant to be a perfect rectangle like the Chatzar Mishkan. According to Rabbi Yossi, lichatchila it should be square, but the Eved, it is kasha even if it's not square. Continues the Gemara. Karfev shu yoser from beis osayim. If we have a storage area which is larger in size than 2 sa, shu kafla dira, but it was constructed and enclosed for the sake of dira, of residency. For instance, a person's home has a Pesach entranceway to this karfev, so this enclosure is perfectly fine, although it's large in size, but it's for the sake of residence. So what happened? Nizra rubai. Let's say most of it was planted with vegetables and seeds. Hareyu kagina v'aser. It attains the status of a gina. It's like a garden. And it's no longer suitable for dira. It's not a place of residence, and therefore you cannot carry throughout this enclosure, since it's an enclosure which is a non-dira enclosure and larger than 2 sa. Nita rubai. Let's say most of it was planted with trees, which provide shade and shelter and have residential value. Hareyu kuchatzer mutter. We regard it like a front yard. It's a mokim dira, and you can carry throughout this area despite its large size. Explains the Gemara, Nizra rubai. If most of the area was planted with vegetables, for instance, we say it's awesome. Amar of Huna, Bereder of Yishua lo yamar. This is only a concern Ella yosim beis osayim. The planted portion of this area encompasses more than 2 sa, in which case it's a mokim, a non-dira mokim, non-residential place, which is larger than 2 sa, which is also, and therefore you can't carry in the planted area, nor can you carry in the unplanted area as well, which is open and exposed, breached, so to speak, to the planted area, which is also. We know that whenever we have one area which is open to another area where you cannot carry, that area which is also betiltal interferes with the first area, and you cannot carry in that area as well, unless they separate from each other to create a mechitza between them, which allows the other portion betiltal. But if they're both exposed to each other, then the place which is usr interferes and actually affects isser on the entire area. So Ravuna tells us if the planted area is greater than 2 sa, in which case it's a mokim shelo yukaf ladira, which is larger than 2 sa, you cannot carry there, and therefore you cannot carry in the entire enclosure, even in the unplanted portion which is exposed to this area. Aval beisa sayim mutter. But if the planted portion only encompasses 2 sa, which is the limit, which is perfectly fine, even for a mokim which is not dira, then you're fine. You can carry there, and you can carry in the entire karfif, even in the unplanted portion as well. Now, although there are really 2 designations to this karfif, there's a portion of it which is like a gina, it's a planted portion which has a specific use, and we have the unplanted portion which is like a chatzar, different type of usage. Nevertheless, there's no concern whatsoever. You can carry from one to the other. Since they're both outdoor usage areas, they don't really have their own specific designation. It doesn't appear like you're carrying from one rishus to the other. Says the Gemara, apparently you're following Shittas Reb Shimon, Keman Reb Shimon. That's not as Reb Shimon tells us. Whenever we have outdoor areas, even though they're slightly dissimilar, you have a roof next to a chatzar, next to a karfif, you can transfer freely from one to the other. This non Reb Shimon Omer echad gagois, whether roofs, vechad chatzeres, courtyards, vechad karfifos, whether these storage areas, rishus achasen, they're considered to be like one rishus, one domain. With regards to kalim that were present in any of these areas at the onset of Shabbos. This doesn't pertain to kalim which were present inside one's home at the onset of Shabbos, in which case that kli attains a dwelling status, meaning it is connected and identifies with a dira, with a house, with an apartment, which is designated for intense personal use, as opposed to these outdoor areas, which is not really designated for substantial use, substantial personal use. It's an outdoor area, it's a roof, it's a courtyard. And therefore, Rav Shimon tells us, depends what kli was speaking about. If a kli was inside the home, at the entry point of Shabbos, that kli attains a status of a designated kli for intense personal use. And therefore, you cannot transfer it out to the chatzar, to the karfef, to the gag, as opposed to a kli which was already in the chatzar, or the gag, or the karfef, not inside a dwelling, not inside a dira, apartment, or a house. So this kli which was present in these outdoor areas, which is not really designated for intense, high-level personal use. Therefore, it can be transferred freely throughout all these areas. According to Rav Shimon, all these areas are really one and the same. They're so similar to each other. They're not really houses, not really apartments. They're outdoor usage areas. Therefore, they don't have that prominence and chashivas. We should go ahead and separate between this type of usage and that type of usage. Even though this is a roof, this is a courtyard, this is a storage area, we connect them all, regard them as one and the same, and you can transfer freely from one to the other. As opposed to the Chacham who maintain, you cannot transfer a kli from a gag to a chatzar, because each one has its own designated use, each one has its own identity, and therefore it appears as though you're transferring from one rishus to the other. This can lead to a person transferring from rishus yachid to rishus rabbim. That's Shittas Chacham. Apparently Rav Huna, Beit of Shiur, tells us, let's get back to our karfef, which was planted, mostly planted with vegetables, for instance. He says there's no concern provided the planted area is 2 sa or less, in which case, although it's not hukaf ladira, because it's vegetables, but if it doesn't exceed the limit of 2 sa, then you're okay, you can transfer there. And there's no concern transferring there, carrying there, or carrying throughout the unplanted area as well, which is exposed to this planted area. Why? Because they don't interfere with each other. You can transfer from one to the other, the planted to the unplanted and vice versa. They're both considered to be so similar to each other, the outdoor areas. So according to Rav Shimon, they're classified together, they're categorized as one type of rishus, and they don't interfere with each other. So apparently Rav Huna Rav Shua is following Shittas Rav Shimon, whereas according to Rabbanan, since these two areas, the planted and unplanted, are considered like two separate types of areas, they have two types of designations. We have the planted area, which is like a gina, a karfef. We have the unplanted, which is considered like a courtyard, like a chutzah. So they're classified as two different types of categories of rishuyos, and you cannot transfer from one to the other. Therefore, one would not be able to carry even in the chutzah on its own, and the planted portion on its own, because they're both exposed to each other. And since you cannot transfer one to the other, when they're exposed to each other, they interfere with each other. You cannot carry throughout each individual rishus unless there's a mechitza between them that separates them, designates them as two separate rishus, protects them from each other, so to speak. And only then could you carry throughout each rishus. So again, Rav Huna Rav Shua tells us that if the planted portion only encompasses an area of 2 sa, there's no concern with carrying throughout this whole entire karfef, the planted and the unplanted alike. He's following Rav Shimon, who does not differentiate between two different types of outdoor areas. Continues the Gemara. The Rav Shimon Nami, even according to Rav Shimon, there's a concern. Why? Kivan din Zeruba, since most of this karfef was planted, Haveyahu Meuta, this lesser portion is batal legabaruba, becomes batal to the planted portion. Vahavale karfef, yoiser beis osayim va'asa. This results in creating a karfef, a planted karfef, a non-dira karfef, which is greater than 2 sa. Let's take a look on Rashi on top line. It says Rashi, batal legabaruba. If it's only a small portion which is left unplanted, it's batal to the rest. Vahavikilu nizaru kuloi. There's all the entire area is planted. Vahavale karfef yoiser beis osayim. So we have a storage area, a karfef, a planted karfef, greater than 2 sa. Now, although initially This area was constructed for the sake of dira, but now once it's been planted, it transforms it into a non-residential enclosure. Chashav k'lo yukav l'dira. Why? Dehavi kule gina. It's entirely a garden. Or begina lo mehan yukav l'dira. Since it's a gina, the fact that initially it was enclosed for the sake of dira, it was just transformed into a garden. That's a non-residential entity. Therefore, says the Gemara, once you planted most of the area, this small area becomes batal, becomes nullified. Since all the entire area was planted, how can we allow carrying anywhere throughout this enclosure? The entire area becomes a gina. It becomes a non-residential enclosure, which is greater than 2 sa. Says on the second line, Ela itmar hachi itmar. Rather, the correct version of Rav Huna ben Yeshua's interpretation is meant to be as follows. Ha miyuta shari. So the Brisa tells us that if most of the area is planted, you cannot carry. That's correct. You cannot carry throughout the entire enclosure, even at the unplanted portion, because it's batal. But ha miyuta shari. But if just a small portion, a lesser part of this karfeh was planted with vegetables, then you're okay. On that we have Rav Huna's explanation. Rav Huna, that is only said, meaning the allowance to carry, when only a lesser portion was planted. That's only said Ela de lo yahave beis hasayim. If that portion equals less than 2 sa, in which case it's not really a significantly planted area. Aval beis hasayim asur. But if that planted portion is 2 sa, it's asur. Why? Because once it's 2 sa, it's a prominent sized area. It's considered a karfif, which is lo yukav l'dira, but it's still fine because it's only 2 sa. But the problem will be, now we have one large enclosure that contains 2 different types of areas, of usage areas. We have the karfif portion, the planted portion, which on its own wouldn't pose a problem because it's only 2 sa. But next to it we have an unplanted portion, which is like a chatzar. So they're serving 2 different purposes. They have 2 different designations, 2 different usages. According to the Rabbanan, one cannot transfer from one type of area to the other. And therefore, since they're both exposed to each other, they interfere with each other. Says the Gemara, Rabbanan. Apparently he's following Shittas Rabbanan, who have this concern. Continues the Gemara, Difti, Masnil Kula. He had a more lenient version of Rav Huna ben Yeshua's interpretation. He's actually following Shittas Rav Shimon, who's not concerned about transferring throughout various outdoor areas. And it's going as follows. Let's go back to the Brisa. We have this large karfef, which was planted. So the Brisa says if it's mostly planted, then it's asur. It becomes a gina. Ha miyuta shari. But apparently if only a lesser portion of this place was planted, then you're okay. Amar of Huna, Breda Vishua lo yamar. This is only allowed ela beis hasayim. If the miyut that was planted with vegetables was turned into a mokim shelo yukav l'dira, encompasses the area of 2 sa'ah, in which case you'll have to carry there, and you can carry in the rest of the enclosed area as well, even in the chatzar portion. There's no concern here, because although they're 2 separate types of areas, they don't interfere with each other. If the planted portion is greater than 2 sa'ah, then it's a makam shelo yukav l'dira, which is larger than the allowance of 2 sa'ah, so you cannot carry it there. And that results in an Isra on the entire enclosure which is exposed to this area. But getting back to the first clause of Rav Huna ben Yeshua, so if the planted portion was only 2 sa, which is within the limit, then it's okay. Keman kirab Shimon. Apparently he's following Reb Shimon, who allows transferring freely throughout outdoor areas, planted, unplanted, chatzar, gina, is no concern. Therefore, in this case, if the planted portion is only 2 sa, which is within the limit, so although this enclosure contains now 2 different elements, planted, which is like a gina, like a karfif, and the unplanted, which is like just a courtyard, different type of use, there's no concern whatsoever. Okay, in summary, we learned about a karfif which was larger than 2 sa, which was actually enclosed for the sake of dira. Then we had some developments here. Nizra rubai. Most of the area is planted with vegetables. It turns into a non-residential enclosure, and you cannot carry throughout the area. Nita rubai. Most of it was planted with trees. These have residential value, and therefore it retains its dira status. What if a small portion of this karfif was planted with seeds? So in a case where it's less than 2 sa, there's no concern whatsoever. We know that a makom shelo yukav l'dira can be 2 sa or less. Now, if it's larger than 2 sa, certainly it's asr, according to all shittas. That exceeds the limit. What if it's exactly 2 sa? According to Reb Shimon, it's mutter. Because although right now we have 2 different types of areas in this enclosure, we have the planted portion, we have the unplanted portion. Since they're both outdoor areas, there's no concern with transferring from one to the other. They don't interfere with each other. And therefore, one can carry throughout this entire area. According to Rabbanon, being that we have 2 different types of usage areas here, it is also to carry throughout this enclosure. Okay, time for a brief review of today's daf. We began with Oisen Paslan Berois, the boards that are constructed around the be'er, which are only valid when there's actually water present there. So what type of containment of water are we speaking about? According to Rekiva, either one of these elements are sufficient to allow the pasan. Either it's a source of fresh water, it's a be'er, or if it belongs to a rabbim, in which case even a bur, which is merely a containment of rainwater, would allow the pasan to be constructed, because when it's a source of fresh water, there's less concern of the water depleting, and when it's a rabbim, they'll keep each other mindful to only carry when appropriate. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava maintains we need both elements present. It needs to be a be'er and also belong to a rabbim. We proceeded with the halacha of a karfif, shlukiv l'dira, a place which was enclosed for non-residential purposes. One can carry throughout this area, provided it fits a number of criterions. Regarding the features of this enclosure, we have a machlekes. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava maintains it needs to contain some sort of residential element to it. A shemeira, a guardhouse, a beis dira, a dwelling, or situated within close proximity to the city. Rabbi Yehuda maintains even a boir, a seach, a ma'ara, a boir and seach can provide water, a ma'ara provide shelter. That's enough to allow carrying within this area. Rabbi Yehuda maintains none of these elements are required. Now regarding the size of this area, according to Tanakama, it's 70 amma 4 tefachim plus a little bit squared. According to Rabbi Akiva, 70 amma 4 tefachim. Regarding the shape, Rabbi Akiva maintains it needs to be a square. Rabbi Lezer says lichatchila should actually be the arka pishnayim barachba. It should be 100 by 50. According to Rabbi Yossi, lichatchila it should be square, but the Eved, even if it's a rectangle, it's fine. We concluded with the case of the karfif, which was larger than 2 sa, which was hukav ladira. So we said if it was planted with trees, which have residential value to them, you can carry throughout this area. If it was planted with seeds, all depends on the situation.